Hi, welcome back. Whenever I start working with a new client, the first thing we do is a kitchen makeover, where they look at their pantry, they take everything out, and they get rid of all the foods so that they don't want to be eating anymore on a Mediterranean diet. For instance, foods with a lot of added sugar, foods with lots of preservatives or flavorings or colorings, heavily processed foods, of course also foods that are past their sell-by date. And then once their cupboards are bare, we fill them up with delicious Mediterranean foods. And today I'm going to show you what's in my Mediterranean pantry. So let's start with the macronutrient that the Mediterranean diet is most known for. It's healthy fats. Of course, the queen of Mediterranean fats, olive oil, which I use for all my cooking, for roasting, even for baking, and for salad dressings. Extra virgin olive oil. It doesn't have to be particularly expensive. In the attached list that I'm going to attach to this video, you will actually see some of the brands that I recommend. Next, when I bake, and sometimes for cooking, I will use ghee, which is clarified butter. This is grass-fed ghee that I buy. It costs about $10 a jar and it keeps for a very, very long time. Sometimes if I'm baking or even occasionally having butter on toast, I'll use pasture-fed butter or grass-fed butter, which has a much healthier fatty acid profile than conventionally reared butters. And then there are some seed and nut fats that I always keep in my pantry. Tahini, which is ground up sesame seeds, that's a very Mediterranean fat. It's used in hummus and baba ganoush. Sometimes I like to stir it into yogurt, it's delicious. Almond butter, which I often use for my smoothies, or peanut butter, which is delicious again in smoothies or on apple wedges. And if you eat mayonnaise, I recommend that you buy mayonnaise that's made with avocado oil, which is a lot healthier than the canola or soybean oils that most commercial mayonnaises are made with. When you make your own salad dressings, you don't just need good olive oil, you also need delicious vinegar. This is my favorite. It's called white balsamic vinegar. I also use apple cider vinegar for dressings, and I also drink it diluted in water. It's actually been shown in studies to help lower blood sugar levels when you have a glass of apple cider vinegar water with your meals. It doesn't take much, a teaspoon or two in a large glass of water. And then finally, here's something a little more unusual. It's called pomegranate molasses. It's a reduction of pomegranate juice that's quite acidic, and so it works a lot like vinegar in dressings. You can buy it in Middle Eastern stores or on Amazon. And again, I'll put all the names of the products in the shopping list. Delicious part of the Mediterranean diet are nuts and seeds. They are delicious snacks, but you can also use them in baking and cooking, sprinkling over salads, putting in cakes, etc., etc. My favorite nuts are almonds and hazelnuts. I often make a little trail mix where I combine them in a Ziploc bag that I carry around with me in my handbag. Seeds, I usually keep pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds, which I use to make bircher muesli, overnight oats. Sometimes I also lightly roast them in a skillet with a little bit of tamari for a delicious, salty, crunchy snack. Sesame seeds are also delicious, lightly toasted and sprinkled over your meals. All of these need to be stored in a cool, dark place because they can easily go off when they're exposed to heat or light. Finally, on the subject of seeds, my favorite crisp bread is Trader Joe's whole grain crisp bread, which is covered with sesame seeds and flax seeds, and it's actually quite low in carbs and really, really satisfying. Next, let's talk about legumes. Beans and lentils and chickpeas are another mainstay of the Mediterranean diet. I usually keep a stock of dried beans in my pantry, cannellini beans or lentils or chickpeas. I soak them for 24 to 48 hours in water like this, and then cook them briefly for about half an hour until they're soft. If you don't have time to do that, canned beans are completely fine. They're slightly harder to digest, but most people are completely happy eating canned beans. So again, I always keep a stock of chickpeas, lentils, and cannellini beans that make it really easy to rustle up a quick bean salad, or you can just throw them on a salad or in a soup. And now let's talk about grains. In addition to being filling and delicious, they can be very nutritious when you eat whole grains. When you eat refined grains, most of the nutrients and the fiber has gone missing. So I recommend that you stock a few basic grains. Of course, there are umpteen varieties of grains that you could keep in your cupboards, but it's best to keep a fairly small stock and then replace them regularly. So For breakfast, for instance, I recommend that you get traditional rolled oats, the really big rolled oats, or steel cut oats. And as I will show you in a future video, it's actually very easy to cook these quickly in a pressure cooker. As far as rice is concerned, I recommend that you get either brown rice, which takes a longer time to cook, or Uncle Ben's parboiled rice. The great thing about parboiled rice is that it has a very low glycemic index and actually is also a prebiotic. It feeds the healthy gut bacteria. And it cooks quickly, and it's almost impossible to overcook. Finally, if you want to get a little bit more adventurous, you can try some of these ancient grains like farro, which cooks just like rice and tastes has a lovely chewy texture and tastes delicious in salads. Of course, the Mediterranean diet wouldn't be complete without a wide array of herbs and spices. Some of the more conventionally known Mediterranean flavors are things like herbe de Provence or Italian herb mix, and I definitely recommend you keep a bottle of each of those, as well as maybe rosemary and oregano. And then for some of the more Eastern Mediterranean dishes, like Lebanese and North African dishes, I recommend that you buy turmeric, cumin, coriander, paprika, and cinnamon. And of course, a good twist of pepper goes in almost every Mediterranean dish. Do yourself a favor and buy a really good pepper mill. This one's from IKEA. It wasn't expensive. It's very easy to set and to fill, and it tastes so much better than pre-ground pepper. Finally, I want to show you a few more ingredients that really give deep, delicious flavors to your Mediterranean dishes. First of all, of course, the most Mediterranean of all vegetables, tomatoes in cans. In the summer, of course, I like to use vine-ripened tomatoes, but in the winter it's fantastic to have a stock of diced tomatoes, and also tomato puree or concentrate, which adds a lovely acidic zing to a lot of dishes. You don't have to use much, and I recommend that you buy it in a tube, because that way you can just squirt a little out and put the lid back on, and you don't have a can of half-open tomato puree sitting in your fridge and getting moldy. I do sometimes cheat, and instead of using fresh garlic, I use garlic powder, not garlic salt. It's just dried ground up powder. It doesn't have the same health benefits as fresh garlic, but it's fine when you're in a hurry. It's better than nothing. Coming back to tomatoes, I also love using sun-dried tomatoes. There are some, and particularly the ones that are not stored in oil, but that are just dried and packaged, and they're sort of semi-moist. There's either the standard ones or the smoked ones, which would give a delicious smoky flavor to dishes. I also like using coconut aminos, which again give a sort of deep umami taste to dishes, and sesame oil. Maple syrup is a great sweetener. It's probably the only sweetener I use in my cooking because it's low glycemic. It doesn't spike your blood sugar as much as other sweeteners. Of course, olives. I usually keep a stock of green and black olives in my fridge that taste delicious in Mediterranean stews, or just make a good snack. Also, speaking of Mediterranean stews, especially in North Africa, places like Morocco, they put a lot of dried fruit in their stews, like a lamb tagine, for instance, with prunes or dried apricots. I also add these to my trail mix sometimes. Again, don't overdo them. Only eat 2 or 3 in a sitting. Eat about as many dried fruits as you would fresh fruits. And finally, something I never run out of is chicken stock. It's actually bone broth, which is high in protein and really gives a lot of depth to dishes, and even when you're cooking rice with it and pasta dishes like that. So I hope this video will help you take yet another step towards eating a Mediterranean diet. So once you've cleaned out your cabinets, print out the attached shopping list and take it with you next time you go shopping. Have fun stocking up.